Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the Gordon JCC, I'm happy to welcome you to our Yom HaShoah service today. The Gordon JCC has been proud to have the National Holocaust Memorial on our campus for what we just figured out was 16 years. And it's just so beautiful. We're happy to have it as a part of our project. I'm going to ask everyone to silence their cell phones, please, before we start. And Cindy Goad, our president, asked me to share her regrets. She can't be here. She's out of town at a bar mitzvah, so otherwise she would be here. So on behalf of all of us, I'm going to say a pledge that we normally say together, but we're going to read it today. We dedicate this pledge to all who suffered and survived, to the families who perished in the flames. To take this oath, we vow we never shall let the sacred memory of the perished 6 million be scorned or erased. We take this oath, vision becomes word, to be handed down from generation to generation. And I invite Amalia up for Eli.
Eli, Eli, shelo yigamer leolam, hachov v'hayam, rishru shel hamayim, v'rakash hamayim, tfilat Adam, hachov v'hayam, rishru shel hamayim, v'rakash hamayim, tfilat Adam. Eli, Eli, shelo yigamer leolam, hachov v'hayam, rishru shel hamayim, v'rakash hamayim, tfilat Adam, hachov v'hayam, rishru shel hamayim, v'rakash hamayim, tfilat Adam.
Thank you, Amalia. We'll now read the poem by Hannah Senish. We can read together in the English at the top of the next page. We kindle these lights in memory of the 6 million Jews murdered by the Nazis and their collaborators. May the memory of the righteous be for a blessing. Zrochanam livracham. At this point, I'd like to invite up our 6 guests to light the large candles, and then anyone who is here who is a child, grandchild, and I understand we even have a great-grandchild of a survivor here today, if you'll feel free to come up and light one of the smaller candles. If you'll join me at the bottom of that page, the poem in English. Blessed is the match consumed in kindling flame. Blessed is the flame that burns in the secret fastness of the heart. Blessed is the heart with strength to stop its beating for honor's sake. Blessed is the match consumed in kindling flame. And now it's my great honor to introduce one of my inspirations, not just for this program, for so many things in general. Felicia Anchor, please come up to introduce our speaker.
I might be an inspiration, but I need the microphone lower. Good afternoon. My name is Felicia Figlar-Zanker, and I am proud to be the chair of the Nashville Holocaust Memorial Committee. And it is truly an honor to be asked to introduce our speaker, Dr. Joanna Sliwa, today. For a number of us here today, we are second-generation children born to survivors of the Holocaust. We might be grandparents ourselves, but we are children still. When we recall our lives, legacy, and growing up in the homes where the shadow of the Holocaust was lurking. Our parents, by luck, circumstance, or righteous assistance, survived. But as you well know, 6 million of our fellow Jews did not. Among them were 1.5 million children, and who knows how their lives and the world's future may have been altered were they allowed to live. So today we begin the Nashville journey of honoring their memory with the dedication of this magnificent tree sculpture and the butterflies we will create to adorn it. As our vision evolved, we wanted to know more about these young lives that were ended too soon. And when I contacted my dear friend Betsy Anthony at the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington with a suggestion for someone to guide us, she didn't skip a beat in suggesting Dr. Joanna Sliwa. Dr. Sliwa received her PhD from the prestigious Strassler Center for Holocaust and Genocide Studies at Clark University. She is a historian of the Holocaust and Polish Jewish history, and she has received a number of awards and fellowships, including a Fulbright Scholarship. Her area of study for her fellowship at the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum was the subject she will speak about with us today: Jewish children in German-occupied Krakow. This evolved into a 2021 publication of her book, Jewish Children in Krakow, A Micro-History of the Holocaust. The book was awarded a Weiner Holocaust Library Ernst Frankel Prize in 2020. I have been fortunate to spend time in Krakow as part of the Tennessee education groups I led during my term as chair of the Tennessee Holocaust Commission. I am eager to hear and learn more about life there during the Shoah and the tragic circumstances impacting its most vulnerable citizens, the children. Dr. Sliwa is a prolific speaker and author. Find her on Facebook and you will see exactly what I mean. In addition, she works as a translator and consultant for projects ranging from academic text to websites, films, TV programs, and exhibits. She is prolific in English, Polish, German, Yiddish, and Hebrew. On a personal note, I am so thrilled to welcome and introduce a young, brilliant scholar who will carry the important legacy and history of the Holocaust forward into the future. Joanna, thank you for joining us here today.
Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you, Felicia, for this beautiful, beautiful, generous introduction. It really warms my heart. Thank you so much. It means a lot to me, and I had the honor to spend time with you earlier today and talk about your work for Holocaust education, scholarship, commemoration, and that was very enlightening for me. So thank you for this opportunity. Thank you so much for inviting me to today's event. I would like to thank the Jewish Federation. I would like to thank Deborah Olshansky, who reached out to me and spoke with me about today's event, about the Butterfly Project that will be introduced later on today. It is a great honor for me to be part of this program today and to honor the memory of Holocaust victims and Holocaust survivors. And I will begin with stories. I'm a storyteller, so I will tell a lot of stories. Celina Karp and her parents, Ignacy and Felicia, were among the 56,000 Jews who lived in Kraków, Poland. Before the outbreak of World War II, Jewish people comprised 25% of the city's population. In other words, Kraków had the fourth largest Jewish community in all of Poland before World War II. Celina celebrated her 8th birthday in May 1939. Life was kind of nice till the war, she recalled many years later. And pre-war photos, video footage confirm that Jewish families were happy in Kraków, sitting, playing, strolling in the park that encircles the picturesque market square in Kraków. And I know that some of you will go for a delegation to Kraków and will be able to see that. But of course, Jewish life in Poland was far from idyllic. Anti-Semitic legislation and attacks on Jews were part of life. And yet, the Karps lived in a predominantly non-Jewish neighborhood. As most Jewish children in the city, Celina attended a Polish public school. I loved learning, she recalled. Unfortunately, Celina's dreams were cut short when World War II broke out in September 1939. Kraków became the capital of German-occupied Poland. The historic Wawel Castle became the headquarters of the German Governor General, and he soon proceeded to isolate and exploit the city's Jews, and then purge them from the city. For Celina, as a child, let's remember she was 8 years old, the first sign of change was that she had to place her new puppy in an animal shelter. Her parents felt that Celina wouldn't be able to care for her pet with the impending war. Celina recalled this incident many years later because to her, she irrevocably lost her sense of continuity, carefree childhood, and sense of ownership that she associated with having the puppy. Celina lost her feeling of security when her father fled from Kraków, as did many Jewish men, towards Lviv, to the east, in fear of Nazi persecution. Soon, Celina also lost her sense of stability when Jewish children were expelled from school. By 1940, Celina and all the Jews of Kraków were forbidden to go to the park, and they could not live or walk on certain streets. For the Karps, remember they lived in a predominantly non-Jewish neighborhood, that meant that they were expelled from their home and that they had to move to the Jewish quarter, which was not yet the ghetto. The Jewish quarter was the place of residence of many Jews who had lived there even before the war. But now, all Jews from all over the city were pushed into the district. By March 1941, Jews were forced into the ghetto in Kraków, which was located outside the historic Jewish quarter. Celina's life was changed completely. as were the lives of the 2,500 Jewish children who passed through the ghetto until March 1943. Jewish children were forced to mature fast, to detect and avoid danger, and to take on roles to try to survive just another day. Every year on Yom HaShoah, we commemorate the 6 million Jews who were murdered and the communities that were forever obliterated. We reflect on the human and material destruction. We remember the 1.5 million Jewish children who were murdered by the Germans and their collaborators. 1.5 million, that is a big number. But behind every number, there is a person with a name, a family, a history. And just earlier, before the program, Felicia took me on a tour of the Holocaust Memorial here on this campus. And what really shines through are the personal stories, the names of victims and survivors. Some children left poems, drawings, diaries. We have photos of some of the children. We know the names of some of the children. On Yom HaShoah, we also honor the survivors. Many of them left accounts of what they went through. It is through the personal histories that we get a fuller picture of what happened to ordinary Jews. Not only how they died, but how they lived, how they tried to make sense of the new reality, and how they struggled to survive. This brings me to some questions. Whose stories do we tell? Why do we focus only on some, often iconic stories? Histories about and by Jewish children are often used to represent the enormity and cruelty of Nazi anti-Jewish ideology. But do we know about what young people experienced in the Shoah? Do we treat records by children and by child survivors as legitimate sources about the Holocaust? I began with the story of an ordinary Jewish girl from Krakow, Celina Karp. We know about her story and about the thousands of child survivors like her from post-war accounts. Celina submitted her oral history only in 1996, and she did so to the USC Shoah Foundation Visual History Archive. This initiative was spearheaded by the film director Steven Spielberg. He was deeply affected by the survivors with whom he spoke while he was making the film Schindler's List that premiered in 1993 and then went on to win an Oscar. The film tells the story of the German industrialist Oskar Schindler and his role in rescuing over 1,000 Jews in Krakow, including Celina and her parents. Individual memories, feelings, thoughts, behavior, and actions can be described only by those who were direct participants in the events. Because of their age during the Shoah, child survivors rarely recall dates, names, or chronology. What they do remember are specific events that had an impact on them and on their families. Child survivors often speak about how they internalize the changes happening around them and how the Nazi persecution affected them on a personal level. Such accounts allow us to gain insights into the lives of the young people, the majority, who did not survive. In this way, by reading and listening to what the child survivors wanted to convey to us, we honor both those Jewish children who perished and those who survived. By listening to these stories, we also gain a deeper understanding of the coping mechanisms, resistance efforts, and survival strategies that Jews, including children, employed during the Holocaust. The Krakow ghetto was not like the Warsaw ghetto. In Krakow, about 25,000 Jews lived in the ghetto throughout the 2 years of its existence. These Jews were mostly from Krakow and from the vicinity of the city. They transferred their familial and social networks into the ghetto. They continued operating self-help institutions, and they created new ones in response to the changing situation in the ghetto. Adults were instrumental in advising children on ways to try to survive. In Selina Karb's case, her parents told her to lie about her age. By identifying herself as 2 years older, Selina was able to work alongside her parents, and she remained with her parents throughout the day. In addition, she could also be presented as useful to the Germans because she worked. Only 12 years old, Selina was operating a sewing machine, working in a uniform factory run by an Austrian businessman. At the same age, Leon Lazon worked making brushes. In his memoir, he stated, and I quote, "I didn't think of myself as a child anymore, nor did anyone else. I needed to contribute to my family's survival any way I could." This is a powerful quote for me every time I see it, because it encourages reflection on what it meant to be a Jewish child during the Holocaust. The first action in the Krakow ghetto in summer 1942 confirmed the link between labor and permission to remain in a ghetto. And permission to remain in a ghetto meant being able to live just for another day. Selina was spared, and Leon, as was Leon. But about 7,000 Jews, including children, were deported to the Belzec killing center. Some children evaded capture because they hid. And this was a very hard thing to do with the few options that existed for finding hiding places in the confined and overcrowded area of the ghetto. Aneta Baral, who was 13 years old during Second German action in the ghetto in October 1942, she hid in a hiding place with about 30 people, adults and children. She witnessed dilemmas and tragedies, such as mothers smothering their crying infants in order to save the remaining Jews in hiding. Still, Aneta, 13 years old, was expected to behave like an adult, to stay silent and wait out the immediate danger. Other children went a step further. As a survival strategy, some engaged in clandestine activities to provide for their families. The German authorities deemed smuggling to be illegal and, in fact, introduced a death penalty for anyone, any Jew, who was found outside the ghetto without proper authorization. And yet, children emerged as occasional and professional smugglers of goods and of people. Janina Fischler was around 10 when she entered the ghetto. She wrote in her memoir, "I think perhaps it was the courage of ignorance, really. I just drifted in and out, a formidable liar. I didn't look Jewish, and I spoke Polish beautifully. No accent, no intonation. And I could spin an absolutely watertight story on the spur of the moment. I had this ability, and I survived because of it." Children like Janina faced expectations from adults who relied on young people to undertake tasks that the adults were not able to do themselves. And children obliged. Maximilian Perlmutter, who was about 9 years old at the time, ran errands on the so-called Aryan, non-Jewish side of the city. And he did so for his mother and for other Jews. Many years later, he admitted that doing so was unnerving for him. But then he added that smuggling gave him a sense of importance and accomplishment, that he as a child could do something for his family. Some children specialized in smuggling out other children from the ghetto. Janka Warszawska was about 12 years old when she was approached by a Jewish man in the ghetto who pleaded with Janka to smuggle out the man's son. There was a prepared hiding place on the so-called Aryan side with a Polish person. The only problem was to whisk out that small child and bring him to safety. This was a traumatic incident for Janka. The boy was crying. She didn't know what to do with him, how to calm him. She recalled after the war that she herself was still a child and she was tasked with this huge responsibility that could get her and the boy killed. And yet, she mustered the courage to keep taking out other children before actions in the ghetto. And eventually, she also saved her own siblings. Children took on adult roles as smugglers, breadwinners, and links between the ghetto and the Aryan side. They were also guardians for younger children. Friends assumed a greater role in the ghetto, where children were left to their own devices to make sense of the reality. Raymond Liebling, known today as the famous film director Roman Polanski, was about 10 years old when he became friends with an older boy, Paweł. From his friend, Roman learned about objects of daily life, something that he would have learned from his parents, from his teachers in times of peace. After Paweł, the older boy, was deported in a German action, Roman found another friend, Stefan, and I mentioned their names because we only know their first names. We do not know their last names. And now Roman became a guide for this younger peer. This gave Roman a sense of satisfaction, of sharing his knowledge, and of proving his importance in the younger friend's life. These are stories about ordinary Jewish children in the Krakow ghetto. We know about what they experienced because they were the few who survived and the few who told their stories. What emerges from the histories that I highlighted here are the tremendous efforts of the young Jews in the ghetto to survive and to ensure the well-being of their family members. They were not passive victims, quite the contrary. Jewish children in the ghetto had agency, however restricted. Children were helping other children. Many assumed adult roles of caregivers for younger siblings and of educators for their peers. Others smuggled out children from the ghetto to place them in hiding on the Aryan side. And still other children took on adult roles to contribute to the household and to present themselves as useful to the Germans. I began with Selina Karp's story. Selina was 14 years old when the war ended. The Holocaust deprived Selina of her childhood. After the war, in the United States, Selina became a teacher. She did not speak about her experiences until 50 years after the end of the war. When she was asked about the message that she had for future generations, Selina said, "Don't hate, try to live with your neighbor, accept people for who they are. Everybody has something to offer. Nobody's better than anybody else." Thank you.
Thank you. I never saw another butterfly. The last, the very last, so richly, brightly, dazzlingly yellow. Perhaps if the sun's tears would sing against a white stone. Such a yellow is carried lightly, way up high. It went away, I'm sure, because it wished to kiss the world goodbye. This is the opening of the poem written by 17-year-old Paweł Friedman, born in Prague on January 7, 1921. He was deported to Theresienstadt concentration camp in 1942 and later to Auschwitz, where he was killed. The poem was found when Theresienstadt was liberated in February 1945, and it serves as the inspiration for the Butterfly Project. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us here today. My name is Deborah Olashansky, and I serve as the Community Relations Director for the Jewish Federation and Jewish Foundation of Nashville and Middle Tennessee. About a year ago, Felicia Anker, Leslie Sachs, and I began to vision how we could bring the Butterfly Project as an addition to the Nashville Holocaust Memorial. The Butterfly Project is a call to action through education, the arts, and memorial making, teaching social justice through lessons of the Holocaust, educating participants about the dangers of hatred and bigotry to cultivate empathy and social responsibility. By painting ceramic butterflies, which are displayed as symbols of resilience and hope, participants learn about and remember the 1.5 million children killed during the Holocaust. In this work, the Butterfly Project honors our commitment to the survivors to never forget. We knew we would launch the project here today and wanted an addition to the memorial ground to ground the effort. We approached artist Alex Lee Moore and he agreed to design. I know I could not have imagined such a magnificent addition and inspiration for our Butterfly Project. Kol hakavod to Alex. You have outdone any expectation I could have imagined. We also could not have imagined that between the time we began planning and today, that the issue of war on children in Europe would become so urgent and relevant as we witnessed the largest humanitarian and refugee crisis in Europe since World War II. Over 2 million children have been forced to flee their homes from the unprovoked Russian assault on Ukraine, which included attacks on buildings, homes, schools, and hospitals. Felicia had worked with her friend to recommend Joanna, and we wanted her to be here today to focus on the tragic experiences inflicted upon the children of Krakow, Poland, at the hands of Nazi cruelty. And we are so grateful that Joanna is here today. Her work highlights the impact of Nazi crimes upon the children of Krakow. Tomorrow, a delegation from Nashville, 6 of us from the Nashville Jewish community, will travel to Poland to witness Ukrainian refugee relief efforts in both Warsaw and Krakow, bringing urgently needed supplies and funds to support that ongoing work. We will also be bringing a very large bag filled with stuffed animals collected from Akiva students to give to the children there. Krakow, a city of about 700,000 people, has become home to over 100,000 refugees, primarily women and children. And the Krakow JCC is a hub for providing food and resources for these families. Joanna is not only familiar with the JCC Krakow, she's a beloved and respected member. The staff there lit up when they heard she would be our guest here today, and it seems the perfect connecting point between the Krakow of World War II and the Krakow of today. The people of Krakow look at their history squarely and as honestly as possible and want to learn the lesson of the past in order to do things differently in the present. They are committed not only to helping the refugees, but to literally take them into their homes. During our planning call with the staff there, they told us we'll be surprised when we arrive. We will not see refugees living on the street or even in tents. All of them are being housed within Krakow homes. We know we cannot fight hate with hate. The only way to bring the future we hope to see is through positive, productive, concerted community-wide efforts like this to work together to stand up against anti-Semitism through education, respect, and inclusion. We hope before you leave today, you'll take one of the butterfly pens to remember both today and our commitment to providing hope for the future. It is now my extreme pleasure to introduce artist Alex Lee Moore.
I want to preface my prepared remarks with a recollection that I had of a visit to Krakow in 2009. It was a bitter winter, 5 degrees. My son Avi and I went to visit Auschwitz, something that was never on my bucket list, and experience the harshness, lifeless place. Several years later, I went there with my niece, Naomi. It was in the spring, and It had a profound impact on me. And I noticed rows of trees, green trees, between the brick buildings, green grass. I searched online and found others whose experience was similar to mine, like a Brian Keeler. It looked so quaint, so normal, so not grotesque, so not evil. They were planted there to help restore the look of Auschwitz, since most of the ones present during the Holocaust died. I wonder what testimony these could offer if we could listen. Trees with so much knowledge of evil, but the witnesses are dead, stories lost forever. In the desert, patches of trees bear witness to the presence of the house of God. But what does it say somewhere when the trees die? Did the blood crying out of the ground poison the once good soil and seep into the hearts of those oaks and poplars? Did the gas and the screams from the nearby chambers tear through the bark with the wind? Did the ash of the recently murdered people drop on the leaves like the branches gave way during a winter storm? From dust we were made, and to dust we will return. But it's not supposed to be like that. We like to say that whoever saves the life of one person saves an entire world. But the first part of that old Jewish teaching notes, whoever destroys a soul has destroyed an entire world. How does one watch a million worlds disappear and not also fall apart? In this hell, only the trees stood out. The condemned spoke to them. Imagine climbing them and soaring away. Caressing the bark meant feeling something real, not something alive that wasn't seeking your death. Close your eyes and you're next to some other tree in some other land. Just a few years after the prisoners planted the trees, the prisoners disappeared. And then the trees fell, before their prime, undone, uncreated, before their time. Just like those who placed them in the ground and sought refuge under their limbs, but relief could not be found. The trees today are older than the ones they replaced, the ones present when time ended. Should we let them prosper in this spot to pretend this is fertile ground, or has the soil already forgotten? Has the wind already blown it all away? Over 1.5 million Jewish children were murdered during the Holocaust, and thousands more were orphaned and scarred for it by life. Among the orphaned children were my father Irvin and my uncle Menachem. Among the murdered was their brother Vovek. Their simple, pure, and ordered childhood prior to the Holocaust is symbolized by the pristine, fluted trunk of this oxidized tree. As were their childhood, these flutes splintered into rigid chaos of branches and twigs. Hope for future generations of children is symbolized by butterflies that will seek shelter in the new growth of bronze leaves. 27 years ago on this date, May 1st, my father Irvin Lamore, of blessed memory, left us. Although I created this monument along with my son Avi, his grandson, it stands as part of Dad's and my mom's legacy and memorial to all the children of the Holocaust.
Everyone has a story. My dad, Daniel Grill, was in his late teens when his parents encouraged him to flee Poland because of the atmosphere that was growing in their community. After several years of trying to get the paperwork needed, in 1939, he was granted permission to leave and come to Nashville, where he had distant relatives. He never saw his parents again. My father-in-law, Max Snodowitz, was also from Poland. He, his parents, 2 siblings were all placed in camps. Max was moved to a labor camp. He and 41 other teenagers were able to escape that camp and live in the surrounding woods. He survived off the land in hiding for about 18 months before the liberation occurred. Only 8 of the 41 survived this ordeal. His family was all murdered. He also came to Tennessee, Memphis, where he had distant relatives. As many new immigrants did, both my father and my father-in-law changed the spelling of their last names. Grill became Gryll, and Notowicz became Notowitz. My dad left a legacy of 18. So far, 3 sons, 5 grandchildren, and 10 great-grandchildren. Max had 4 children and 2 grandchildren, including my son. I say all this to show how the acts of 2 men under different circumstances received their freedom and purpose. The Grill family exists today because of their will to live. This Nashville Holocaust Memorial shows our roots, our heritage, our lineage. It is a place of serenity, of reflection, of thinking about what-ifs. Under the dedicated guidance of Felicia Anchor, we have a place that allows us and others to feel the chilling past of our being. I am pleased to announce to the community that we have a new grove of trees that were planted to help make this area more serene, more thought-provoking, a place of reflection amongst our busy lives. It is also a place where lessons can be taught to those that are eager to learn. The upkeep, maintenance, and coordination of keeping this area in tune with its purpose takes funding. In that respect, we are kicking off a drive to help in that endeavor. We are looking for donors of any amount that can help us achieve our longtime goals. For those willing and able to donate a minimum of $1,000, we are going to dedicate our grove of trees. A donor's plaque will be made and appropriately placed to indicate those donors' names with appreciation. I am pleased to announce that Amati's Lodge number 46 of B'nai B'rith, a lodge that has been serving the Nashville community for well over 100 years, of which I have served in just about every capacity, is donating $5,000 toward this endeavor. I encourage anyone or any organization that feels the need for keeping this area a place of learning, a place of reflection, and a place of serenity to contact me for making their gift. Keep in mind that our loss of 6 million Jews affected us all. Whether or not you or your family escaped the horrors or you had no direct lineage to those that did. Again, thank you, Felicia and the Gordon JCC, for making this place a reality and a place for all. I look forward to hearing from anyone who wants to donate toward this endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Alex. We are about to conclude our service today. I'll be inviting Rabbi Saul Strasberg up to lead us in El Malei Rachamim. At the conclusion of that prayer, I invite Emily May up for a short poem, and then we will rise together, those who are able, rise together to recite the Mourner's Kaddish. Rabbi Strasberg.
Please join me in the Hebrew followed by the English, the El Malei Rachamim. El Malei Rachamim, Shochem Bamromim, Hamsei Menucha Nechona, Tachad Kanfei Ashchina, Bemalot Kedoshim Utahorim, Kezoar Harakia Mazhirim, and Nishmot Shisha Milyon, Achenu Ve'achiotenu, Shenehergu Al Kiddush Hashem, Baal Harachamim, Yastirem Beseter Knafav Leolamim, V'yitzror B'tzror HaChaim Et Nishmatam, Adonai Hu Nachalatam, v'yanuchu b'shalom al mishkavam v'nomar amen. In English, fully compassionate God and high, to our 6 million brothers and sisters murdered because they were Jews, grant clear and certain rest with you in the lofty heights of the sacred and pure, whose brightness shines like the very glow of heaven. Source of mercy, forever enfold them in the embrace of your wings. Secure their souls in eternity. Adonai, they are yours. May they rest in peace. Amen.
My mother, Rosemary May, of blessed memory, wrote these words after going to Yad Vashem on her last trip in 1986. Walking through Yad Vashem, I remembered a girl of 10 years old behind barbed wire fences, witness to so much, deprived so much, scared all the time. And still, I survived 5 years of this life. I am certain it was God's will to have me live to talk and teach about it and have others learn from it. I hope. For all the ones who did not survive and have no one left to say Kaddish for them, let us all jointly do so and remember.
I invite you all to rise if you're able and join together for the special Kaddish for the concentration camp and ghetto version. Yitgadal, Auschwitz, v'yitkadash, Lodz, Shemei Rabbah, Ponar, Bilma Divra Chirutei, Babiyar, v'yamlich Malchutei, Maidanik, v'chayechon uvyomechon, Birkenau, uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, Kovno, v'agala ubizman Kariv, Transnistria, v'imru Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabbah Mevorach Leolam Ulomei Olmaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach Theresienstadt. V'yitpa'ar v'yitromam Buchenwald. V'yitnaseh v'yithadar Treblinka. V'yithale v'yithalal Vilna. Shemei Dekutsha Bergen-Belsen. Brich Hu Leila Mauthausen. Min kol birchata v'shirata Dachau. Tushbechata v'nechemata Minsk, Damiran Be'alma Vorsa, v'imru Amen. Yehei Shlama Rabba min Shemaya, v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru Amen. Oseh Shalom b'imromav, hu ya'aseh Shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi Strasberg. At this time, I'd like to call up any students who are here and also Cantor Levine to lead the students in the singing of Hatikva, the hope. No matter how many dark and difficult days we as a Jewish people witness and experience, we continue to have hope for a better and brighter future. Please, any students who are here, please come up to join Cantor Levine in Hatikva.
Kadima,
Thank you. That's the conclusion of our service today. Thank you again so much for taking time to be here, to honor the memories of the past, and to look forward with hope to a brighter future. I'm certain, well, I shouldn't say that, but I'm hoping Alex will be willing to meet people who would like to walk up and see the tree a little bit more closely. Please remember to take a butterfly tree as a remembrance. And again, thank you for joining us for our service today. Thank you again to Joanna, our speaker. Thank you very much.